podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us right off the back of Sunderland's thrilling, enthralling, encapsulating 0-0 draw away at Carrow Road against Norwich City. It was not a particularly great game of football, but still some interesting things to talk about. We're now in the playoffs, confirmed at least. I mean, the dream is still alive for that second place, but I don't know if we're going to get there. But we are definitely going to be in the playoffs, and as we suspected would be the case, we would be, but we are now definitely there. So there's that at least. Joining me to chat about this brilliant night of scintillating Football Association rules football. First off, we've got Bomber. Hello, mate.
Hello, Gav. How are you doing? All right? Managed to stay awake?
I'm actually more sprightly than I was about 4 or 5 hours ago. I don't know why. Sunderland just, get the buzz going in us, mate.
It's the buzz of a guaranteed playoff place, mate. That's it's going to keep you up all night.
And Enzo Le Fee playing deep in midfield. It's just that. Also with us making his first appearance on this iteration of the pod, it's Angry Man. It's Craig Chapman. He's back. Hello, mate.
There's no buzz here. You might have the buzz. There's no buzz here. And honest to God, I think I've drew the short straw. This is my first appearance to talk about this one tonight.
Hey, I didn't think it was all bad. Off the bat then, Bomber, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give us 2 positives from that performance.
2 positives. Okay, well, the first one I would say is great to see Enzo Le Fee back. I do think he genuinely made an impact. Looked like he'd never been away. Admittedly, it wasn't for a massively long period of time. But, things definitely got better when he got on the pitch. And we started looking a bit more threatening, even though the bar was, it was quite low. And secondly, we've kept an away clean sheet against, a team that have been runaway scorers this year. I think before tonight, they're only second behind Leeds, I think. Mm-hmm. And I've had a look back through their results. This is only the second time since the end of January that they've actually conceded a goal, that they've actually not scored in a match. Right. So the first one was a home loss, 1-0 loss to Preston, and then tonight, but they've scored in every other game regardless of the result. So, and it's a third clean sheet in a row for us. So, you've got that's 2.5 positives for you there.
Go on, Craig. You must have a couple more to add.
I echo Bomber's sentiments. I think after an hour, once we made the subs, we were livened up a bit, and Enzo Le Fee looks very much like that Ahmad type standout player, doesn't he? And I think he could really be the difference maker. Some nice little bits of play linking up with Patrick Roberts. And look, although nothing really came off tonight, it's still a positive, and it's definitely something to look forward to in the remaining games. I think at the back, obviously, important to keep the clean sheet. Chris Mepham again, largely untroubled. Luke O'Nien, some theatrics in there. Obviously wound a few of their players up, but again, both of them absolutely superb. And like Bomber said, it's a third clean sheet, and we were leaking goals. We were leaking silly goals. So to sort of really to reinforce, a tight defensive unit again, it's like I say, it is a positive. Overall, it wasn't the best of 90 minutes, but 4 points from those 2 games. I think we probably would have took that at the start of the weekend. Yeah,
the big plus for me over recent games has been the defending by an absolute mile. And it's at the right point in the season, Bomber, that we're starting to see solidity at the back. At a time when we're moving people all over the place. Sirkin's not fit. Obviously, we've got no Adji Elise. Hume, by all accounts, has carried an injury, yet playing probably the best football he's played all season. Mepham and O'Nien are really solidifying that partnership, given they've got no real competition for who else can come in that position. So it's for me, that's a big positive. And of course, Anthony Patterson. I mean, I think the first half in particular, he was possibly our best player. Did okay second half, didn't have much to do, but 3 clean sheets in a row, that'll really help his confidence going into the final run of the season. I mean, yeah, we can focus on the negatives, and we will come to some of those, but I think generally to come away with a clean sheet, a point away at a team, as you said, a team who score a lot of goals and have players on the pitch who can make an impact. And we saw We saw glimpses of that tonight when we saw bits of play from Norwich, which was really, really impressive, I thought. I think that's an overall decent result, all things considered.
Yeah, it is. And it's a good point you make about the defence, because as we've said already, we have been giving away silly goals. And, it's at this time when the defence is a bit of a mishmash and we're really down to the bare bones where you could forgive those kind of silly goals. But we've kind of gone the other way and have seemed to have got better. I don't know whether that back four have got a bit of a siege mentality going on. But you're right, particularly Mepham and 09, there would be cause for some complacency in there, perhaps. Like you said, there's not really any competition for places in there, but what they've done actually instead is really galvanise a centre-back pair and a relationship there. And, there was a few first 20, 25 minutes, Norwich had a few decent chances, but they never really looked like threatening in the way that, like a Leeds have when we played them, or even Coventry a couple of weeks back. We were giving away gilt-edged chances to them time and time again. So it's good to see that even when we're moving Trey Hume from right back to left back and dropping Alan Brown into right back and having to play Leo Heckialda, who's got next to no minutes this season, it is good to see. And you're right, it's come at exactly the right time of the season, coming into a playoff run. So yeah, long may that continue.
Yeah, we will talk about some of the negatives because it wasn't great, particularly in that first half, Craig, where I think for half an hour or so, really, we were very, very poor. We couldn't hold on to the ball. We were letting them in behind too much. We were just slack, to be honest. Although the defence looked pretty organised and stable, none of our forward play came off. It was sort of like the last game, wasn't it, where although we got the win, we didn't play great on the counter-attack, and I would say it was the same here. I think we really need to look into that. That's something that is a bit of a concern. I know it got better as the game went on, but the way we started wasn't great.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe a little bit of mitigation. Could you not maybe do them, a little bit of a favour in saying Tommy Watson, obviously rusty coming back, short of minutes, Alexic, obviously no minutes, definitely playing out of position. It was like a hot potato, wasn't it? Every time the ball came near them, we couldn't retain possession. I mean, obviously Dan Neil's had an excellent season, but this wasn't one of his better performances, at least in the first half, as some of his passing wasn't coming off. So yeah, I mean, like I say, it was certainly disjointed, but perhaps he can maybe offer a little bit of mitigation. But as the game grew, went on, we certainly got stronger. So, like I say, obviously, as negative as it was, the perhaps can be a little bit of an excuse offered there. But I think it is important, at least for those two who did struggle on the wings, that they got through it unscathed. They've got some important minutes, because if we need to rely on them, then at least obviously it's not going to be too much of an unfamiliarity if they've got to just drop in unexpected. So, I mean, like I say, obviously it wasn't a thriller by any stretch, but it is what it is. It's a game that we'll probably largely forget 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, it felt a bit like a cup game to me, Bomber, when you do change the team up and you maybe start players who ordinarily wouldn't and give them minutes. And as Craig said, Alexic has barely kicked the ball. Watson's been injured for ages and barely kicked the ball. There was obviously Hjelder coming in at left back and he looked rusty too. So I guess, again, another net positive is we've got minutes into players who we might actually need towards the end of the season. This was something that Phil Smith said on the pod over the weekend when he was talking about the need to get Watson in particular involved, because if we do need these players, we can't let them go in cold to a playoff run. They've got to have played minutes. They've got to have played games. Obviously, Harrison Jones came on, and I know he's been a regular for the under-21s this season and played a lot of football, but so he's not as rusty as the others. But it is important, isn't it, to get these lads involved. Even if they're never used again, we need them ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Harrison Jones's case, under-21s football is very different to, full-time senior men's football in particular.
Sharp, though, didn't he?
He did. He looked decent. He didn't look out of place, certainly. But yeah, to your point, it is important to get these players minutes, because, like you said, everyone being fit, they might not necessarily be the ones who start or even come on as part of a 14 or 15 that get used in a match. However, very few teams, and particularly not us this season, have had the luxury of having a full squad that's fit, firing, sharp, ready to go. We always seem to be easing someone back in, and just as they're eased back in, someone else comes out. So particularly at this stage of the season, and now that we've guaranteed our playoff place, I think we'll probably see more of it. For all intents and purposes, we're going to finish fourth. I can't see, I think it's Bristol City and Middlesbrough at the minute, or anyone below them, amassing so many points and us losing so many games that we're going to lose that fourth place position. So now's the time to do it. Any players that need those minutes, that you likes of your Alan Browns, etc. He got a full 90 in again today. Even Eliza Mayenda, he's been in games, but he's not played that many full 90 minutes over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. So you look at that front four that we had, and there's not a lot of 90 minutes in there in recent times. So it's massively important, because you never know what's going to happen in these next 6 weeks. You never know. We've seen firsthand what can happen in playoff matches. In the playoff final chart, when Max Power goes off in the first couple of minutes, and all of a sudden it's a completely different game plan, and we've had to rely on somebody else. So things can turn in playoff games, and we're going to need those players, 1, 2 of them undoubtedly, between them before the season's done and before we decide where we're playing football next season.
Yeah, Bomber's just sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of that game. And watching Grant Ledbetter play on a Wembley pitch when his legs were being held together by gaffer tape. But yeah, I mean, after half an hour or so though, Craig, I don't know whether it was we got better or Norwich just came down to our level, but there was certainly a period there where Norwich were definitely on top. And then I think towards the half time, we actually asserted a little bit more control. It wasn't as though we were playing particularly well. We were just better than terrible, which we had been to that point. Which I guess is a positive, because when you're away from home, you tend to be without the ball for long periods anyways. And it's normally that first 20, 25 minutes when a home team really drives home the advantage. And if they don't get that advantage, it then becomes easier for the away team to sort of cruise through the game. And I think that's probably what happened, despite the fact we weren't great towards the end of the first half. I think Norwich just really, they had the chance to really assert themselves and they didn't take it.
Yeah, it probably had like the hallmarks of an end of season game going to it as well. I think they had that period, and then when they didn't get a goal, they probably just went through the motions a little bit. And you could tell by the end of the game, it definitely felt like they had nothing left to play for. But I think just obviously in terms of that period, obviously that they had, certainly in control. If you think of obviously Josh Sargent, a hell of a player, he's scoring relentlessly for them all the time, and he's probably a Premier League player next season. But again, for us to have kept him quiet, obviously with a bit of a lopsided back four, again, you can certainly add that to the positives. But I think that probably was, again, the difference. I mean, they had everything really until the final third. So we kept them at bay. Obviously, they had a few chances, but Patterson, he didn't really do anything spectacular, did he? He didn't need to.
No.
So, no. I mean, like I say, obviously the talking points will be that they had the best of the first half, we had the best of the second, but I mean, like I say, it's just one of those games, wasn't it? I mean, there's literally not a lot to take from it at all.
No. Patterson got mentioned there, Bomber, and I know I mentioned him earlier, but I think he was a real positive out that first half because he just dealt with everything. And it wasn't like he had loads of saves to make. I don't think he actually had a proper save to make in the game, to be honest. But it was just the basics, the things he hasn't been doing very well recently. I think in the last couple of games he's got back to it. Just the claiming of the balls when they're coming flying in from the sides with the crosses, he's just getting down and gathering them, and he doesn't look as under pressure. That is another big positive for me, that Patterson is growing in confidence, because I think possibly a month or so ago you may be less confident in his ability to just coast through a game like that.
Yeah, he's been, and rightly so, come under quite a bit of criticism in the last few weeks, but that was as reassuring a performance from Anthony Patterson as you could hope for. Again, going into these last few games of the season and leading into a playoff run, all those things that he, like you said, it's the basics, like the coming for crosses and dealing with them, the picking up of the half chances and not spilling them out or knocking straight back into a centre forward's foot. he did those well. There was one quite early on where there was I can't remember who it was, but someone whipped in a cross and he came out and he punched it. And in, the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, he'll have come out, tried to punch that, missed it, or just, punched it straight down to one of their players. But he actually punched it clear of the box. It was a good, confident kind of fist to the ball. And that set the tone, really. I think there was one really good save that he made in that first half. But most of the action that he had to, do came in that kind of first 20, 25 minutes. With the exception of the Maradona attempt from, I can't remember who it was. But yeah.
Was it Marcondes, I think?
Yeah, possibly.
How did he not get booked for that, by the way?
I don't know. I can only think that because he didn't touch the ball, so he punched Patterson's glove, which made Patterson lose the ball. But, in weeks gone past, Patterson could have thrown that into his own net without anyone touching his gloves. So, it was reassuring to see. And it was good to see him back to somewhat of the Anthony Patterson that we were expecting to see.
Yeah, half time came around, Craig, and I think when we started the second half, we were a lot better. I thought we were, we started pretty decent. O'Nien switched the play out to Alexic, headed it straight to their goalkeeper, but it was a good start. You could tell they'd had a conversation at half time about maybe upping the tempo a little bit and playing higher up the pitch as well. I think the most obvious thing for me at the start of that half was we were sort of 10 yards further up the pitch, and that did leave us exposed a couple of times. There was a few times when Norwich got in behind us, and we dealt with it pretty well, actually, because Sainz looks like he's running in treacle when he's got the ball at his feet. He's not the quickest. But we started the half a lot better, which is a good indicator, because more often than not this season, I think we've been poor coming out after half time. We don't start the second half. It's one of our worst traits, I think, as a team, where we seem to come out from half time and look half asleep, but not tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that we are perhaps a bit more reactive than proactive in that sense, that we don't really kick into gear until we concede a goal or we're chasing a game a little bit. But we did take it to them. There was certainly a difference in there, and I think obviously, as you've mentioned beforehand, that when you are away from home, that you are going to give up large spells of possession. So as a result, obviously, you are going to get penned in a bit. So it's just about capitalising on the chances when you do get the ball. And the first half were as rusty as anything, and I'm not sure whether it was a rocket up the backside at half time. But yeah, we came out, we're a hell of a lot better. Although, the passing and everything like that took a little bit to get going, and it wasn't really until we made the changes before the big notable difference. But I think as the game went on, we certainly grew into it. And I think if there was an extra 10 minutes or so towards the end, that we probably would have nicked it, because, we're talking about chances. Mayender had a few sort of gilt-edged ones where he definitely should have definitely scored at least one of them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mayender had a couple of really good chances, Bomber, didn't he? I mean, there was that one just after the hour mark, which was probably the chance of the game, wasn't it? Where Watson played the ball in, and it sort of deflects into Mayender's path, and he's not quite ready for it. Doesn't get enough on it, and then sort of 4 or 5 minutes later, it was another decent move, where he was found again. But yeah, I mean, Mayender on another night might have got 1 or 2, but it wasn't his night.
Yeah, and I think that's not just Mayender. It didn't come off for pretty much anybody tonight. Sure, Mayender probably had the lion's share in terms of chances, probably for both teams. But yeah, you could tell that his first touch was just a little bit off, and some of his decision making. There was a couple of times in the first half. So the one, for example, where they tried to play it out from the back and we closed it down, and his loose first touch has just taken that chance away from him, where actually he probably doesn't need that first touch, and he can just turn and shoot on the turn, and it's probably taken everybody by surprise. It's just his decision making, and it kind of feels one touch too many, or his last touch wasn't quite good enough for it to set himself up for a shot. But hopefully he'll just chalk it down to one of those. You could see he was frustrated with himself. You could see he felt that he should have done better with at least one of those chances. I think it cut to Luke O'Nien, kind of like just giving him a little pat on the chin to keep his chin up. But I don't think games like that will affect him too much, because it was like a scrappy game. But yeah, I mean, he's doing the right things. The Mayender we see now compared to the Mayender we saw in small glimpses at the start of the season or at the end of last, when we were kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if he's gonna cut it or not, is chalk and cheese. And if his development carries on through that, he'll be a massive player for us for the rest of this season, certainly, and hopefully for seasons to come. But yeah, it just wasn't his night tonight.
No, but the good thing about Mayenda for me is he stays busy. So even when he isn't putting the chances away, he's always a threat. He's always buzzing around trying to do something. I mean, there was a couple of times where, he didn't get the shot away properly or it was saved. But I don't think we have another player who gets into them positions and does that. There was that one where...
Sorry, I was going to say, that was also, talking about him being busy, there was also a couple of times in that second half, before he even moved out to the wide left, where he was back in the left-back position, making sliding tackles to stop crosses and stuff. So his work rate was phenomenal.
Yeah, you touched on it before, Craig, the subs changing the game for us, and they did. I mean, there was a noticeable increase in quality on the pitch, wasn't there, when Le Fee, Robertson, Isidore came on? I mean, Isidore wasn't so much involved, but the big one for me was Enzo Le Fee. And the first real glimpse we've had of him playing in the centre of the park, he was almost like a quarterback, wasn't he? He was like quite deep, but he was pulling the strings, and it was... that was very, very exciting for me to finally see him in that position and see him look comfortable doing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I made the Ahmad comparison because I think in terms of the quality that he's got, it does stick out like a sore thumb. And just having him in that position, I know obviously in an ideal world we would have had Mundle on the left-hand side, and that perhaps isn't going to happen now. And a lot has been made about Tommy Watson and his involvement, but I think obviously it does go to show that by us continuing to have, say, Tommy Watson involved, the important thing from that is making sure that Le Fee is in his rightful position where he can control a game. And you're only seeing it in a small glimpse tonight. And he's nowhere near match fit. Perhaps you want to continue to wrap him up in a bit of bubble wrap, and you don't want to give him, a full 90 or anything yet, because there's just no point, really, is there?
Yeah.
So we really need to manage his minutes well, because if we've got him in there, and we've got Job in there, I mean, Christ, that's going to control just about every single game, isn't it? You talk about how busy Mayenda is. If you want Le Fee slotting balls through, there's nobody better, is there? So definitely a positive from tonight. I mean, no look, by the time we stop this recording, there'll be some serious injury or something that's probably picked up. But no, like I say, it's just brilliant to have him back. Obviously, he's certainly going to be crucial for us in the next few games. But I think the most important thing is just to manage him efficiently. Do not put him in needlessly. Don't be starting him this weekend. Just let him take over nicely, and like I say, we'll have him sharp for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think there was a point, Bomber, where Le Fee was in the left back position. He thought he was playing baller league. He was doing flicks and tricks around their winger, and it came off though.
It came off, yeah.
Yeah, but he did, didn't he? He had a real impact when he came on the pitch, and I think Craig was bang on there when he said if the game had gone on sort of 10 minutes more, we might have scored, and it would have come from him. He played a lush ball. I think it was through to Mayenda into the channel, and did one to Isidore as well. Just the type of pass that there isn't another player in the team that can play that pass. And for me, Dan Neil has that in his locker occasionally, but Le Fee seems to do it with regularity. He just spots these passes. There was one pass he played into Hume down the left channel. It was one of the last chances of the game where Hume crossed it left-footed. And it was one of them where any other player on the pitch probably takes a couple more touches and waits another second and a half to play it. He played the pass that early that Hume was able to run onto it left-footed and play it first time. And I was just watching it thinking, there just isn't another player in the squad who's got that ability.
No, there isn't. And that's the difference. There's no one else in that squad who can do that with any sort of regularity. If that ball... I know the one that you're talking about in particular, that he played through to Trey Hume, and you're right, he played one down the left to Mayenda as well, and he played one kind of down the centre, but along the floor into Isidore as well. But if that ball falls to any other centre midfielder, they're taking a touch and they're probably playing it sideways or turning and playing it back to Mepham or 9. And it's no surprise that him and his just natural inclination to just get the ball and immediately take a touch, get his head up, and sometimes not even get his head up because he already knows where the runs are coming from, and just play that pass. It's that killer, those killer passes is what made us so good in the run up to him getting injured and coming out of the squad, because Isidore's quick, Mayenda's quick, everybody else can time those runs, and he just can play those passes effortlessly. Like you said, Dan Neil can do it, but he does it kind of 1 in 6, 1 in 7, whereas Enzo Le Fee is 100%, 10 out of 10. Every time he picks that ball up, he's looking to play that pass. There was a couple of intricate little 1-2s he did as well, I think, on that right-hand side with like Watson, Brown and him. And yeah, he was taking the mick out of Norwich really at times.
Yeah. I don't know if Watson was on the pitch when he was on the pitch, was he?
Oh, no, sorry. No, you're right. It was
late, mate. I'll let you off.
Yeah, it was whoever was on that right-hand side. There was a little triangle between him,
Robert
Brown, and it might be, probably was Roberts, to be fair. Yeah, like I said, he's just a little magician in those sorts of areas.
Yeah. We dominated the game, like I say, up to that point, I think, once they came on the pitch. But there were a couple of hairy moments, and I want to spotlight this because I think it's only fair, and we've already talked about them. But towards I think it's the 78th and 80th minute, Mepham, there was 2 blocks. I mean, the first one, it was a really good move by Norwich. They eventually got a shot away from Nunez, and then Mepham blocked the shot with his head, but it was heading in, or it was heading at least goalwards. And then he made an absolutely outstanding tackle on 80 minutes, Craig. I mean, Chris Mepham, for me, he was brilliant at the weekend. But there was a little period, wasn't there, where Mepham, he was off the boil, and I think Ballard got back into the team. But we're now starting to see the Premier League defender that we know we've got. Like, he is that good, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think the positive for him as well, whether it's with us or wherever he ends up going, is he does have time on his side. I think there's this sort of narrative that's been put out that he's sort of like an old man. He's only in his mid-20s, so he's got such a long career ahead of him. I know he's the old man of the team because of how young we are, but no, he's a very experienced head, and him and 09 complement each other very well. And he just very calm, very collective all the time. Like you say, that break that they had, he just glided over, takes the ball, and whilst they're throwing their hands in the air wanting a free kick, we're 10 yards up the pitch because of just how effortlessly he's took the ball, and he's got us further up the field. And again, it's another one. I think we need to really manage him well over the course of the next few games, because the last time when we went into the playoffs with no fit centre backs, he's going to be crucial for us. He made an important block in the first half as well. Obviously, in the second half, one at the weekend, and it's a lot of contributions that he actually makes, which more often than not perhaps goes unnoticed. But again, it's just how sort of comfortable he is. He's a brilliant defender, and again, it's certainly one of the positives of the recruitment.
Yeah, so we're in the playoffs finally, Bomber, confirmed, at least in the playoffs. Does it change anything, do you think? Because I think we kind of already accepted that a while ago, didn't we? I mean, you could tell even by the team selection tonight, we knew we were in it. But I mean, at least it's confirmed. We can say we're in there, and we can sort of plan around it now, can't we?
Yeah, we can. Like you said, I think it was pretty much guaranteed, all but like mathematical certainty before tonight. The only thing I think that the narrative might change a little bit is that because the likes of Sheffield United losing and Burnley not winning and Leeds, all right, they won tonight, but they've gone through a bit of a rocky patch. The narrative might change a little bit, that it would be a shame to have not won it, because there is a very, very 1 in 100 chance that we might catch 1 or 2 of them. But it doesn't change the fact that we're guaranteed playoffs, which is, at the start of the season, we would have all, I think, unanimously bit someone's hand off who was offering us that at the start of the season, given what last season was. I think what I would like to see over these next few games, and I think there's part of me that thinks that this is happening already, and it's one of the reasons why we saw such a kind of negative and defensive, certainly first 25, 30 minutes today, is I think all of this, or I'd like to think all of this, is building up to a master plan from Regis Labrise, that he knows that an away leg in a playoff semi-final, that's how we're going to need to play. We're going to need to be resolute defensively. We're going to need to try and not concede a goal, or certainly not concede too many chances. And I think in the way that he set up tonight, like I said, there's a little part of me that would like to think that all of this is building up to a playoff semi-final over 2 legs and then a final date at Wembley. Whether it's giving players who need it the right sort of minutes, like Alan Brown, for example, he's playing here, there and everywhere just to get 90 minutes into his legs. But yeah, like I say, the optimist in me thinks that this is all part of a 5-game plan to give Enzo Le Fee the right minutes, to give Isidore the right amount of rest, to give Job the right amount of rest, so that we're all fit, primed, ready for a 2-legged affair against whoever it is, and then a final and a roll of a dice at Wembley.
Yeah, so all things considered, Craig, a decent point, decent result, not one that we'll ever remember, as you said earlier, but a result all the same, isn't it? A point on the road and a clean sheet, you can't complain at that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I say, perhaps we haven't been great for a little while in terms of really being dominant in the game. But yeah, like I say, obviously 4 points from these particular 2 fixtures, it's a decent return. Obviously, Bomber mentioning there about the chances of catching those above us. I mean, look, there was always the smallest of hopes, but I don't think tonight was sort of, the games that have proved costly. I think it was those, run of fixtures, the 6 games in November. I think it was the period of home games, Watford, Plymouth, Hull. That's the ones which are probably going to prove costly. On the flip side of that, obviously, Sheffield United have been beat by Hull. Leeds have dropped points. So we've all had our sticky patches. But yeah, it's the playoffs. It's a lottery from here on out, isn't it? So I suppose we've just got to make sure we're going all guns blazing.
Yeah, we just got to see who makes it now. I think it's going to be quite interesting because Bristol City have picked up form at the right time. Borough have got themselves in there. Coventry have obviously dropped off a little bit, as have West Brom. So, well, at the minute we're playing Bristol City as things stand. So it's and we still got them to play. Haven't we? I think do we play them Good Friday?
Yeah.
So we've still got some interesting games to come, despite the fact we've got such a gap there. So, yeah, these games for me. I've said it a few times now, and people are probably bored of us saying it, but it does feel like sort of a pre-season before the end of the season, and we're trying to manage the squad the best we can without it negatively impacting results. Tonight was the biggest gamble of all because we've had a 3-game week, and if we were going to rest players, it was going to be tonight for another away game. Job didn't even travel, and by all accounts, he's fine. He's just got a knock on his ankle, and they've said you can miss this one. We're in that fortunate position where we can do it. And whilst people might complain a bit at the performance as a result of that, I think it's the right approach. I'm quite on board with it, if I'm honest.
Thing is, given the chance, let's say that we risk him tonight, we'll win the game 1-0, but on the flip side, he's then out for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's it,
what option are you going to take? I think obviously it's a small sacrifice that we've needed to pay. So, yeah, keep them all wrapped up in bubble wrap.
And in the grand scheme of things, it's not really going to have any effect on our league position or our chances in the playoffs. In fact, by resting him, it's probably enhanced it. But yeah, I'm with you, Gavin. It's what I was just saying a moment ago that these. You probably put it in a better way that I did. That these last like 4 or 5 games, they're the pre-season that leads up to our 3-game season, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fortunate position we're in. We've got to make the most of it. And as Craig just touched on there, we could have started Job tonight. If tonight was the playoff semi-final, he would have started, wouldn't he? And same goes for Enzo Le Fee. But and there was. Obviously, I was reading the tweets after the team came out, and people were like, "Why is Le Fee not starting?" And there's a very obvious reason: we don't need to.
Yeah.
It's the top and bottom of it. We've got a game on Saturday, and he might start that one. He might not start till the game after that. But we've just got to look after the players we've got. As you can see from the bench tonight, we are really down to the bare bones, and we can ill afford any more injuries. So if we've got the opportunity to give players a rest and a break, and if that means chucking in a kid who's barely played, like Watson or Alexic or Harrison Jones, in order to make sure that for the last 3 games of the season that they're in a good place. I'm all for it. I think everybody can say at this stage that's the approach. So let's just cross our fingers. As Craig said before, there's been no more injuries while we've been recording because I can't deal with any more of those. We will end off with some 3-word reviews from the Roker Report Twitter followers. We'll start off with this from Rama, the mag botherer, John. He said, ticking over nicely. Ethan has said, made me sleepy. IB, the streak continues with a picture of Leo Hjelde. Obviously, we've never lost with Leo Hjelde on the pitch, have we? Which, I mean, I would start him in the final in that case if it carries on. Cam has said, first mission accomplished. Tony Byrne, tournament mode engaged. Nathan Rutherford says no squad depth. Owen Sarah says, how are the playoffs? Stu Tenchilad, he says, bloody hard watch. Michael Donaghy says, playoffs confirmed. Nicholas Wilson, he says, Le Fee crucial. John Wilson says, playoffs it is. Aiden112 says, no more autos. Bilbao Black Cats, another poor performance. George says, boring as fuck. Alex Charlton says, I regret watching. McHugh17 says, we need Job. Ian Humble says, fringe players lacking. David Storrs says, second best again. Bit harsh. I think it was a game of two halves, wasn't it? Rocker says, Enzo, playoffs, Wembley. Mepham and Patto says, bloody playoffs incoming. I don't think he's looking forward to it. Alexis shite says, SAFC Reedy. Bit harsh.
Yeah.
Again, our own position and unfit. Bradley Dennis, glad that's over. Bell says, when's kick-off? Ross R says, solid away point. Steve Richards says, third clean sheet. Johnny says, 3 clean sheets. Martin Thompson says, there's a plan. Dan Whitehead says, eyes are bleeding. Adrian Young says, in the playoffs. Callum says, wrong starting lineup. Be interested to find out.
Not sure who else was able to go in there.
Yeah. Ryan Carter says, watching paint dry. Carl Trotter says, absolute ballfest. Andrew Mack says, please remain, please. WJ Brown says, playoffs, baby. Joe Lewins need to improve. No playoff momentum from Kyle. Tom says, slow midfield shit. Mark Pearson, a bit shit. I mean, we've got quite a lot. I'm keep going here. Adam Slaughton, inspiring and sauntering. Simon James says, bored to death. Mackham289 says, crock of shite. And Alan Anderson says, what was that? So a real mix of views on that, because I think we've been quite positive. I don't know if that's because Half-Full Henderson's leading the conversation here or what, but I'm more inclined to draw positives out of what was clearly a warm-up game for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at it objectively, it was a god-awful game of football, and it was tough to watch. But there are things, if we're buying into this, we know we're going to get the playoffs, so this is all a build-up to a 3-game, effectively, tournament, then, we're just starting that. So a 0-0 draw and a clean sheet and a third clean sheet in a row. Not only that, but a clean sheet against a team as free scoring as Norwich have been this season is a good foundation to start off with. To start our, if this is the group stages of the tournament, do you know what I mean? We're building up nicely, and we've seen Le Fee back on the pitch. We've kept a clean sheet with an absolute patched up back. Anthony Patterson looks somewhat back to the Anthony Patterson we expected. And on another day, Eliza Manda would have got a hat trick. So I'm with you. I'm happy to be positive on that, Gav.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. And if anybody thinks we are negative Nellies, then you've got the wrong podcast. We are right on the Reggie's train towards the promotion campaign. Thank you very much, Bomber. Craig, cheers.
You're very welcome. Thank you, mate.
Thank you for staying up late with us. I now have to edit this podcast and get it out. So I hope the listeners appreciate the lengths we go to produce this wonderful content. We will be back tomorrow with a proper review of all things Sunderland. We've got Jeff Brown, formerly of BBC Look North. I think it's formerly now. I think he's retired, hasn't he, Jeff? But Jeff still gets along to Sunderland games and is right on the ball. So we will have him on the pod, joined by Chris and Martin. And later in the week, we'll have a Swansea preview, news podcasts. We are virtually daily at this point. So there will be a podcast probably every day this week. So hopefully you're enjoying it. We're getting lots of good feedback on the forums and social media and stuff. Everyone seems to be really enjoying the new format for the pod. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for listening. Like I say, we'll be back with another pod tomorrow. Make sure you check that out. We'll catch us later.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Our public schools are a place where all kids feel like they belong.
My children.
My family. My community.
All students.
All students.
All students belong in a great public school.
Let's get ready for back to school at nea.org/backtoschool.